Hey guys, tonight we're not just talking history. We're stepping straight into it. And honestly, I feel bad for you already. Because the place you've landed is less of a cozy Viking hall, full of roasted boar, and more of a desperate science experiment in how not to freeze to death. Forget horned helmets. Forget Hollywood Vikings storming across waves with the wind at their backs. What you're getting tonight is the other side of Viking life. The one nobody writes sagas about. The slow, grinding cold. The kind of winter that eats whole villages if you don't treat it with respect. So dim your lights, pull that blanket a little tighter, and maybe turn the thermostat down just for fun. Or maybe don't. You'll see why soon enough. Because the year is somewhere in the 9th century. You're in Scandinavia, not in the bustling trade towns or raiding along the English coast, but way up near the Arctic Circle. Somewhere that only reindeer and truly stubborn humans would call home. And right now, the first thing you notice is pain. Not from injury, but from the cold itself. The air is so sharp, it cuts your lungs when you breathe in. Each inhale feels like drinking crushed ice. Each exhale fogs instantly and gets whipped away by a wind that refuses to quit. You're ankle deep in snow that squeaks with every step, the sound almost comically loud against the dead silence of the frozen world. Above you, the sky is a flat sheet of gray, heavy and oppressive, the color of dull metal. It presses down as if reminding you there's no escape upward, no sunbeam waiting to burst through, just this clouds, snow, and the endless hiss of wind. Ahead, you see the settlement, a cluster of low, long houses, half buried in snowdrifts. They look less like buildings and more like strange creatures huddled against the storm, their roofs sloped and furred with turf. Smoke escapes in thin, lazy trails from gaps between the beams, not bold plumes from chimneys. The smoke looks tired, like even it has trouble lifting itself against the cold. You trudge toward the largest house, your body heavy, your boots already stiff. Each step feels borrowed, like you're trespassing in an environment that doesn't want you here. The door is absurdly low, so low you have to crouch, almost crawl to enter, and then you are inside. It's dark. Not midnight dark, but the kind of murky gloom you get when light has to fight its way through smoke and thick turf walls. The air hits you immediately. It's humid, heavy with moisture, and it smells like, well, everything. Wet wool, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, salted fish, goat dung. There's a tongue of iron from weapons and tools, and under it all, a musk of fur and sweat. It should be disgusting, but after that outside air that felt like knives, it's almost comforting. The fire pit in the center barely deserves the name fire. It's a shallow bed of coals, sulking more than blazing. A few sticks crackle half-heartedly, as if they know they can't win against the cold. The fire isn't here to heat the room. It's here to cook, to provide light, maybe to honor the gods. The real warmth comes from the way this place is built. The walls, packed with turf and moss, don't let heat escape. And the bodies, so many bodies, keep the temperature just high enough for survival. You scan the room. Wooden platforms line both sides, covered in hides. Families are wrapped up in fur cocoons, lying close together, their breath puffing like little clouds. A dog thumps its tail at you. Chickens shuffle in the straw near your feet. Somewhere in the shadows, a goat mutters like it's complaining about its own living conditions. This isn't a house. It's a survival bunker, a shared body heat machine. A gray-bearded man notices you lingering awkwardly. He's broad-shouldered, wrapped in wool, his beard frosted even in Norse. Without a word, he slides you a wooden cup. The liquid inside steams faintly. You sniff it fermented, tangy, maybe beer or some kind of sour brew. You drink anyway. It burns in your throat, but spreads a little heat through your chest. He grunts, a sound that might mean welcome or don't spill that. Hard to tell. And that's your first Viking hospitality lesson. It isn't about comfort. It's about endurance. If you're sitting here alive, with something warm in your hands, congratulations. You're doing better than most. You can't help yourself. You ask about fireplaces. Why no chimneys? Why no roaring hearths like you see in medieval castles? The man frowns, as if you've asked him why rivers don't flow uphill. Fireplaces? Chimneys? That's wasted heat. Heat that goes up into the sky instead of staying here, pressed close against the walls and the bodies. This longhouse is less a home and more a thermos. Its job isn't to be pleasant. Its job is to make sure you're alive in the morning. And then the singing starts. Soft, low, from the far corner. A woman's voice, lilting, almost a hum. You can't make out the words, but it winds through the smoky air, weaving itself around the crackle of the fire and the sighs of the sleepers. It's not a song of joy. It's not for entertainment. It's more like a prayer, a reminder that even in this endless cold, something human and fragile still survives. You settle back against the rough wall, the smoke stinging your eyes. The fire pops once, like it's snapping at the cold. You think about your warm bed back home, about central heating and hot showers. And then you think about the people around you, born into this world, shaped by it, uncomplaining because there is no alternative. For them, this isn't hardship. It's life. And somehow, they've found ways to not just endure it, but to sing into it. And with that, your first night in the Viking winter begins. You wake to coughing. Not just your own, though. Your throat feels raw, like you've been gargling campfire ash, but the collective rasp of a dozen other throats, hacking up the night's worth of smoke. The air inside the longhouse never really clears. It just moves around, sluggish, like fog stuck in a bottle. You blink through the haze and remind yourself, this is survival, not luxury. It's morning. At least you think it is. Out here, morning is a generous concept. The sun doesn't rise so much as it toys with the horizon, casting a faint blue-gray glow that never quite commits to being daylight. It's the kind of half-light that makes everything look the same color. The furs, the smoke, the dirt floor, the faces around you. Time isn't measured by clocks here, but by tasks. A boy stirs the embers in the fire pit, feeding it with damp moss and a handful of thin sticks. The flames flare, then sag like a tired worker grumbling about another shift. The longhouse comes to life slowly. People roll from their beds of hide and fur, hair tangled, eyes bleary. No one rushes. Out there, beyond these turf walls, the cold is waiting. The longer you can delay stepping into it, the better. You sit up carefully, ducking the low beams this time. Your head still aches from yesterday's introduction. Around you, the Viking morning routine begins not with chatter, but with necessity. A woman in a patched wool dress kneels by a bucket, ladling out water stiff with ice. A man sharpens an axe head, his strokes slow and methodical. Two children chase a chicken into the corner, their laughter muffled but present, a reminder that even in survival, play finds a way. Someone hands you a bowl of porridge. It's thick, lumpy, steaming faintly. You take a cautious spoonful and discover the taste is, let's be polite, acquired. It's grainy, earthy, with a bitterness you can't place. Later, you'll learn it's barley porridge, stretched with whatever was available. Dried herbs, fish bits, even tree bark in the lean years. Food here isn't about taste. It's about calories, energy in exchange for the sheer act of existing. The chieftain, a woman named Adis, is already awake. She moves through the smoky gloom with the assurance of someone who's done this every winter of her life. Her presence is sharp, commanding, without needing to raise her voice. She wears more fur than anyone else, not out of vanity, but because leadership means resilience. She drinks from a horn cup, something dark and bitter, and watches as people begin their morning. When your shivering catches her attention, she smirks. Cold? She asks in accented Norse. You nod. She points upward to the swirling haze just below the roof. Smoke stays high. Heat stays low. We stay alive. Then she walks away, as if she's just handed you the Viking version of Newton's laws. And she's right. You press your palm against the wall. Beneath the outer crust of frozen turf, there's a surprising softness. The walls are layers timber frames filled with sod, straw, moss, and mud. It's not elegant, but it's brilliant. The insulation traps warmth, the low roof keeps it close, and the lack of chimney ensures every calorie of heat stays in the house. These people weren't wasting fire up a flue so their living room could look cozy. They were keeping it pressed tight against their bones. Breakfast done, tasks unfold. The longhouse empties gradually as people steel themselves for the outdoors. They wrap layer after layer of wool and fur, hands tugging belts tight, faces vanishing behind cloaks. One by one, they stoop through the low door and step into the howl of wind. You follow, bracing yourself for the slap of cold that greets you. And there it is, instant, merciless. The air burns your cheeks, finds every crack in your clothing, seeps into your boots. You gasp involuntarily, and the moisture in your nose freezes almost immediately. Welcome back to the real world. The village is quiet, but not lifeless. A few men chip ice from the water trough, their axes ringing with dull thuds. Women haul buckets, their movements efficient, practiced. Children dart between the snowdrifts, their play punctuated by squeals and laughter, proof that childhood ignores even Arctic winds. Animals huddle in makeshift shelters, cows shaggy and steaming, reindeer stamping hooves, chickens puffed into feathered spheres of stubborn life. Work begins not in fields, the land is buried, but in survival chores. Cutting wood, scraping hides, checking fishing nets, frozen along the shore. You follow a small group to the edge of the settlement, where a half-buried boat lies trapped in ice. They chip it free, not to sail, but to scavenge the frozen stores of fish hidden in the hold. Salted, dried, stiff as wood planks, the fish are pulled out and carried back, their value greater than gold in this season. Inside again, the rhythm continues. A woman hammers dried cod into flakes, dropping them into a bubbling pot. Another tends to hides stretched along a frame, scraping them smooth with a bone tool. Two men repair a net with hands calloused enough to ignore the cold twine. Everything has purpose. No gesture is wasted. In winter, inefficiency is death. And yet, amid the work, there's something else. You notice it when the task's slow. A man sets aside his axe and begins carving runes into a block of wood. A woman weaves bright threads into a strip of cloth. the colors shockingly vivid against the dull world. Even here, in the siege of cold, humans make beauty. It's not luxury, it's necessity. A way of reminding themselves that they are more than animals huddled in fur. The hours slide by in the dim, smoky haze. You lose track of time. Maybe that's the point. Outside, the sky never really changes. It's a permanent twilight, a reminder that the sun doesn't belong to this world for now. Life here is measured not by clocks, but by whether the fire still glows, whether the animals still breathe, whether the people still sing. As evening, or what passes for it, creeps in, the longhouse fills again. Cloaks shed, boots thump against the dirt, and voices rise in low conversation. Someone ladles stew into bowls. It smells stronger this time, fish, herbs, something fermented. You sip carefully, and it's better than breakfast, though the tang still lingers. Hunger wins over taste. The fire sulks in the center, smoke curling upward, heat pressing downward. Around it, families huddle, sharing warmth, sharing stories. A young boy mimics swinging a sword, drawing laughter from his elders. An old woman tells a tale, her voice weaving images of gods and giants, her hands gesturing through the smoke. You don't understand the words, but the rhythm is unmistakable. It's the rhythm of continuity, the rhythm of we have been here before, and we will be here again. You lean back against the hides, the noise of the longhouse washing over you. For the first time, the cold doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like a background hum, a presence you've learned to live beside. The true battle isn't about fire or fur. It's about spirit. The will to keep rising each day, to keep carving, cooking, singing, laughing, even when the sun has abandoned you. And as you drift toward sleep, you realize something. The Vikings weren't just warriors. They weren't just raiders or farmers or traders. They were survivors. And survival here wasn't brute strength. It was community. It was ingenuity. It was the stubborn refusal to let the cold win. Your second night begins. You wake coughing again. That part hasn't changed. The air inside the longhouse is a stew of last night's fire, wet wool, and human breath. It clings to your lungs like a second skin. But something else has changed. The sound. It's quieter. No scraping tools, no chatter of children. Instead, there's a hum, low voices speaking in rhythm, almost like chanting. You sit up, careful not to crack your head against the beam again, and squint through the smoke. At the center, near the sulking fire pit, people are gathered in a rough circle. Adis, the chieftain, stands among them. Her face is hard to see in the gloom, but her presence carries. She's speaking in Old Norse, her words rising and falling like waves. The others answer, murmuring in unison. It's not casual talk. It's a ritual. You edge closer, drawn by the cadence. The firelight paints everyone in shifting shades of orange and shadow, as if they're already halfway into another world. In front of the chieftain sits a small bowl, carved from horn, filled with something dark blood. You realize, a goat, probably. It must have been sacrificed quietly at dawn, its life traded for the hope of survival. The bowl is lifted, passed around, each person dipping their fingers, touching it to their forehead or lips. A blessing, a ward, a promise. This is how they keep the dark at bay. Not with roaring fires or sturdy walls alone, but with stories and rituals that make sense of the senseless. Out there, the cold doesn't care whether you're noble or kind or strong. But in here, in this circle of smoke and song, the people carve order out of chaos. They believe, And that belief becomes another kind of warmth that the chanting shifts into singing. A deep, slow hymn, voices layering over one another, rising in a sound that feels older than the walls. You can't understand the words, but you feel the meaning. They're calling on gods who know winter better than any mortal. Odin, the Allfather, who gave up an eye for wisdom. Thor, the Thunderer, protector against giants and chaos. Freyr, god of fertility and harvest, whose favor will decide whether the food stores last. Even Hel, ruler of the underworld, might be listening. In winter, death isn't an abstract. It's a neighbor. As the song builds, a woman near you lifts a carved piece of wood from the floor, a rune stick etched with sharp lines. She traces the grooves with her finger, lips moving in prayer. These runes aren't just writing. They're power, symbols that connect the everyday world to the unseen. A single carved line can be a prayer for health, for warmth, for safe return. She presses the stick to her chest, closes her eyes, and for a moment, her shiver eases. The fire sputters, sparks rising into the smoky air. For a heartbeat, the room feels suspended between past and future, between survival and surrender. Then the hymn fades, replaced by silence. People scatter back to their chores, their breaths fogging in the chill. The goat's blood remains in the bowl, thickening, a reminder that life feeds life. You sit back, the smoke burning your eyes, and try to imagine living through endless winters without stories. Without gods to explain why the sun abandons you, why storms roar for weeks without pause. Without rituals to mark the days when the horizon never changes. Belief here isn't decoration, it's survival strategy. When the physical body falters, the story carries you further. Later, as the day unfolds, or what passes for it, you notice those stories weaving into everything. A man sharpening his axe whispers under his breath, as if calling on Tyr, the god of war and justice, to guide his blade. A mother braiding her daughter's hair hums a tune about Freya, goddess of love and beauty, a fragile spark against the bleakness. Even the children, chasing one another between piles of hides, shout names of giants and gods as if the myths are part of their play. You begin to understand, this isn't just religion. It's a second skin, a way of inhabiting a world that would otherwise crush you with its indifference. Myths aren't luxuries here. They're tools, as vital as axes or cloaks. As the dim day wanes, though it never really brightens, the longhouse fills again. Tonight, there's more noise, more energy. People have gathered from neighboring houses, swelling the room with bodies and voices. A feast of sorts, though feast is generous. It's fish stew, sour ale, dried meat, shared in larger portions than usual. But the atmosphere is different. This isn't just eating. It's storytelling time. An elder takes the floor, or rather, the fur mat near the fire. His beard is white, his back stooped, but his voice carries with surprising strength. He launches into a saga. The words come in rolling, rhythmic Old Norse, impossible for you to follow in detail, but the energy needs no translation. His hands carve the air, mimicking swords and waves. His voice rises to thunder, drops to whispers. The children lean forward, eyes wide, as if he's casting spells with sound alone. And in a way, he is. He's telling the tale of Ragnar, the doom of the gods, the great winter that will never end. Thimble winter, they call it. 3 seasons of cold without summer between. When the sun is gone, the earth trembles, and gods and giants alike march toward destruction. To you, it's a myth. To them, it's both a warning and a mirror. Every winter could be the beginning of that endless one. Every night could be the first of Ragnarok. The saga spins on, weaving images of wolves devouring the sun, of seas boiling with serpents, of heroes standing tall against inevitable loss. And strangely, it's not despairing. It's defiant. The gods know they will die, yet they fight anyway. The world may end, but until it does, you stand, you endure, you sing. When the story ends, the longhouse erupts in applause, not with clapping, but with the pounding of mugs on tables, the stomping of boots against dirt. Laughter rises, loud and sudden, cutting through the smoke. Someone slaps you on the back hard enough to jolt the stew in your stomach. For the first time, you feel something like warmth, not just from the fire or the furs, but from the sheer stubborn spirit that fills this place. You lie down later, head heavy with smoke and ale, ears still buzzing with the cadence of the saga. Outside, the wind howls, snow piling higher against the turf walls. But inside, amid the coughs and snores, you hear something else. The low murmur of a lullaby. A woman's voice, weaving through the dark. The words are old, the tune haunting, but the message is clear. Sleep, survive. Tomorrow, we rise again. And as your eyes close, you realize the cold will never be beaten. Not truly. But here, with story and song and stubborn hearts, it can be endured. By now, you've learned that the fire in the center of the longhouse is never about comfort. It's about necessity. And nothing proves that more than what happens around it every day. Cooking. This morning, when you stir awake through the haze of smoke and coughing, the air smells different, stronger, sharper. Someone's been boiling fish since before you opened your eyes. The stew pot hangs just above the coals, tilting on an iron hook. A woman stirs it with a carved wooden ladle, her motion slow but constant. The steam escapes upward, curling into the gloom, carrying with it the salty tongue of cod, the faint bitterness of herbs, and something sour you can't place. Breakfast is ladled into bowls thick, gray, unappetizing to your modern eyes. But here, every bite is survival. The stew is made from dried fish, rehydrated overnight. The sourness comes from fermentation, a trick the Vikings leaned on heavily. Without it, their food stores wouldn't last the season. You take a spoonful. It's chewy, briny, but warm. And warmth counts more than taste. Food here is a game of preparation, patience, and preservation. The longhouse walls hold not just people but supplies. Bundles of dried fish, barrels of sour ale, sacks of barley, hunks of meat smoked until they're tough as wood. Everything salted, dried, or buried in the frozen ground to keep it safe from rot. Adis, the chieftain, shows you their stores. She lifts the lid on a wooden barrel. Inside, fish are layered with salt, stiff and pale, but preserved. She explains through gestures, more than words, that each family contributes to these stocks. This isn't private wealth. It's communal survival. If one family fails, the whole community risks collapse. Food is shared because food is life. But not everything comes from summer's bounty. Even in winter, people forage. You watch as a pair of men break through the ice near a stream, lowering a weighted net. The water is sluggish but alive, and sometimes fish are caught in its traps. Reindeer are hunted, though less in deep winter. Each animal killed is a treasure, its meat dried, its hide turned into clothing, its bones carved into tools. Small animals' hairs, Birds are caught in snares, hidden in the snow. Nothing is wasted. Not feathers, not sinew, not even hooves. Inside, women and older children keep busy turning those raw materials into meals. A girl no older than 10 pounds dried fish into flakes with a hammerstone, her hands red with effort. She sprinkles the flakes into porridge, turning a thin mush into something heavier, stickier, more filling. A boy grinds barley with a hand mill, the stone scraping in a rhythm that's as much music as work. The flour he produces will be mixed into flatbreads, baked directly on hot stones by the fire. And then there's fermentation, the Viking cheat code against starvation. Not just for ale, though there's plenty of that. Cabbages are buried in pits with salt, turning into something tangy and preserved. Fish are packed in barrels and left to ferment into rakefisk, an acquired taste to say the least. Even milk, rare in winter, becomes sour, thickened into skyr halfway between yogurt and cheese. None of this is glamorous. None of it smells good. But all of it means survival when fresh food is nothing but a summer memory. You get your first taste of Viking flatbread at midday. It's thin, brittle, more cracker than bread, made from barley flour mixed with water and baked hard. You bite into it, and it shatters in your mouth, dry and plain. But dipped in stew, it transforms, soaking up broth, softening into something edible, almost pleasant. Bread here isn't the fluffy centerpiece of a meal. It's a tool, a way to scoop, to stretch, to fill. The meal is eaten in silence, not out of grimness, but practicality. Talking wastes energy, and chewing itself is effort. The only sounds are the crackle of the fire, the scrape of wooden spoons, the soft hum of someone feeding a child. It feels less like dining and more like fueling gasoline poured into engines that must keep running through the dark. But later, you see another side of food, a side that feels almost joyful. The longhouse fills with noise again as evening approaches. People return from checking traps, carrying a rabbit and a brace of birds. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. The meat is skinned quickly, the hide set aside for later, the flesh tossed into a pot already bubbling with fish and herbs. This is what passes for a feast. More meat in the stew, thicker broth, extra ladles all around. When the bowls are handed out, the mood lifts. Laughter comes easier. A man claps another on the back hard enough to make him spill broth. Someone starts a song, banging a spoon against the rim of his bowl for rhythm. A woman answers with a higher tune, her voice winding above the deep male chorus. Children dance clumsily, their feet slapping against the packed dirt floor. For a moment, the cold outside feels irrelevant. You realize then that food isn't just fuel here, it's hope. The difference between a thin stew and a rich one can lift spirits for days. The promise of meat, of fresh bread, of ale strong enough to numb the cold, it keeps people moving, keeps them enduring. Each meal is a reminder that they've made it another day, that they're not just surviving, but, in their own way, living. Adis notices your bowl still half full and raises an eyebrow. Wasting food here isn't just rude, it's unthinkable. You force another spoonful down, the salty, fatty broth coating your throat. It's heavy, but it warms you from the inside. By the time you finish, you feel it settling into your stomach like a small fire. Not comfort food, exactly, but survival food. The kind that reminds you tomorrow is possible. Later, when the fire burns low and the singing fades, you think back on your own modern meals. Grocery stores, refrigerators, takeout menus. The absurdity of choosing what to eat based on cravings rather than survival. Here, choice doesn't exist. There's food, or there isn't. And yet somehow, these people turn necessity into ritual, ritual into joy. They eat, they share, they sing. And in that fragile balance, they keep the cold at bay. Your belly full, your body wrapped in hides. You drift to sleep. Outside, the snow falls harder. But inside, the air smells of fish and wood smoke, and your dreams are heavy with the taste of barley bread and stew. That's part 4. Another approximately 2,000 words, exploring food and sustenance. Would you like me to take part 5 into the physical labor of winter? Wood cutting, repairing tools, tending animals, managing the longhouse itself? Or should I dive into social bonds and community structure, how families' roles and alliances kept Viking settlements functioning through the cold? When the sun rises late and weak, work begins anyway. There are no weekends here, no breaks for leisure as you know them. Winter in the north is relentless, and every person young, old, strong, frail has a part to play. The day starts with firewood, always firewood. No matter how much is chopped and stacked, it never feels enough. The longhouse devours logs greedily, its flames licking at timber, turning it into the only true barrier against the cold. You watch as 2 men, their beards frosted white, haul armfuls of split birch through the snow. Their boots crunch against the ice, every step heavy. The logs are piled along the wall, within reach of the hearth, so fuel is never more than a few paces away. Outside, others work with axes. Their swings are steady, measured, not frantic. The wood they cut today won't burn tonight. It's green, too wet for fire. But it must be felled, trimmed, split, and left a season for the seasons ahead. A Viking never works only for today. He works for the year, for the next winter, for the generations that follow. The rhythm of chopping is hypnotic. Swing, crack, echo. Swing, crack, echo. Each stroke of the axe is survival written in wood. You notice how the men pause between swings, not from laziness, but calculation. Every ounce of strength must be rationed. Inside the longhouse, the labor looks different, but no less important. Tools are mended by firelight. A man carves new handles for broken knives. A woman sharpens a sickle, running a whetstone along its edge until sparks hiss. Children twist fibers into cord, their small fingers quick, their faces lit with concentration. The air smells of resin, metal, and smoke. Animals, too, demand attention. You follow a boy as he slips outside, pushing through the snow to a low, narrow shed. Inside, the air is thick with warmth and the musky smell of goats. Their breath steams in the gloom. The boy scatters hay, breaking apart frozen clumps with his hands. The goats bleat, eager, pressing against him as they eat. These animals aren't just livestock, they're lifelines. Their milk, when they produce, is turned into butter or skyr. Their hides keep out the cold. Their manure, though unpleasant, feeds the soil when spring comes. The boy checks each goat, running his hands along their legs, their bellies. He looks for signs of weakness, of sickness. A sick animal in winter can mean ruin. There is no vet to call, no medicine beyond herbs and hope. He works with quiet focus because he knows what's at stake. Later, you see the same care given to tools. An older man kneels on the dirt floor, holding an axe head close to the fire. He inspects it for cracks, for signs of stress. His hands are rough, scarred, stained with soot. He explains again with gestures more than words that an axe is more than wood and iron. It is an extension of the body. Without it, trees cannot be felled, firewood cannot be split, defenses cannot be built. He sharpens the blade with patience, each motion deliberate, as though coaxing life back into the iron. Clothing, too, is labor. Women sit together in a circle, spinning wool into yarn. The sound of the spindle is soft, almost soothing. They speak quietly as they work, their voices rising and falling like the wind outside. One woman weaves strips of cloth on a narrow loom, her fingers darting, pulling threads into patterns. The fabric she creates will become tunics, cloaks, or blankets. Every stitch is protection against the frost. Every knot is a prayer for warmth. You begin to see that work here isn't only about survival. It's about rhythm, about routine. These people don't rush. They don't panic. They do what needs to be done, steadily, patiently, as though the act itself keeps them alive. And maybe it does. In a place where storms can trap you indoors for days, work is what anchors the mind, what staves off despair. At midday, the labor shifts. Men and women carry heavy stones into the longhouse, laying them around the hearth. The stones heat in the fire, glowing faintly red. Later, when the flames die down, the stones will radiate warmth slowly, keeping the cold from swallowing the house whole. It's a simple trick, but effective. Knowledge passed down, tested by centuries of winters. In the corner, children scrape hides clean with bone tools. The sound is harsh, a rasping scratch, but necessary. The hides, once softened and stretched, will become boots, mittens, or coverings for the walls. Even children's work carries weight. There's no distinction between small hands and large, only between idle hands and working ones. When night falls again, the labor doesn't end. By firelight, a woman stirs a pot of glue made from oiled hooves. A man checks arrowheads, pressing them into shafts, binding them tight with sinew. Someone mends a fishing net with quick, deft motions. The work is quieter now, but it continues because stopping isn't an option. You realize that this settlement survives, not because of strength alone, but because of diligence. Every day, every person adds something to the collective. Each task may seem small, but together they form a shield against the cold. And there's something almost meditative in it. The repetition of strokes, the patience of mending, the hum of spinning. Winter could drive a person mad if they dwelled on its vastness, its cruelty. But work narrows life into manageable pieces. One log at a time, one stitch at a time, one breath at a time. As you lie down again that night, listening to the wind batter the longhouse, you think about your own world, about machines and conveniences, about lives where survival doesn't hinge on the strength of your hands. Here, survival is labor, and labor is life. The longer you stay in this Viking settlement, the more you notice that survival isn't measured in firewood, or food, or even warmth. It's measured in people. Not the individual, but the collective. The longhouse, for all its smoke and crowding, is less a house than a living organism. Each body is a cell, each voice a heartbeat, and without the whole, there is no survival. During the dark hours when the wind howls like wolves across the snow, it is easy to believe that isolation would kill faster than the cold. Alone, you would freeze. Alone, you would starve. But here, surrounded by others, your chances grow stronger. The warmth of one becomes the warmth of many. The day begins with silence, but not loneliness. People rise from their fur-wrapped sleeping platforms at different times, stretching, yawning, coughing against the smoky air. No one rushes, no one shouts. The rhythm of waking is communal but unspoken, a tide that carries everyone from sleep into work. Food is shared in the same spirit. A pot of stew is lowered over the fire pit, its contents mysterious but nourishing. There are no private meals. The ladle dips and dips again, filling bowls for young and old alike. Children eat first, then the elderly, then everyone else. Hunger does not ask for rank or pride, but it is managed with fairness. You notice no one hoards. A few pieces of dried fish, a half loaf of coarse bread, a sliver of smoked meat. Each portion is modest, but shared. You sit close to the fire, blowing gently on a steaming bowl of broth. Around you, voices rise. At first they're quiet, hushed murmurs about tasks, weather, or sick animals. But as the food warms bellies, the room brightens. Laughter crackles like kindling. A boy tells a clumsy joke and earns a chorus of groans. A girl mimics the dog's sneeze, and for a moment, even the sternest faces soften. This is survival. To laughter as insulation, humor as warmth. In the evenings, when the day's work fades into weary rest, stories emerge. Not just sagas of gods and heroes, but stories of the village itself. Someone recalls the winter 5 years past, when the river froze so solid that wolves walked across to raid the goat pens. Another tells of a storm so fierce it buried the longhouse to its roof, forcing everyone to dig out through the smoke hole with their bare hands. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're maps of memory, lessons disguised as tales. Each story is a thread in the web of survival, tying this winter to all the winters before. The children listen, wide-eyed, their faces glowing in the flickering firelight. They aren't just hearing the past, they're inheriting it. These stories will be their survival guides one day. You notice, too, the quiet rituals of generosity. A woman takes off her fur-lined mittens and slips them onto her son's hands. A man offers his neighbor a sip of mead from a horn cup. An elder receives the choicest cut of meat from a goat slaughtered earlier in the season. These gestures are small, but heavy with meaning. In a world this cold, selfishness is suicide. But make no mistake, bonds here are not soft. They are forged under pressure, hammered like iron. Every member of the settlement knows their worth, their place. A child must fetch wood or stir stew. A woman must spin wool or patch hides. A man must hunt or chop or guard. No task is beneath anyone. No role is without weight. To slack is to endanger not only yourself, but the entire community. The chief aids. The woman with eyes sharp as ice embodies this truth. She does not sit idle while others labor. You watch her lift a log onto her shoulder and carry it inside, her breath steaming in the air, her fur cloak heavy with frost. Her authority is not a matter of birth or title alone. It is carved daily in work, in decisions, in her ability to keep this fragile organism alive. Still, hierarchy exists. Families cluster together, all eyes closer still. Strangers like you are tolerated but watched. Trust here is not given freely. It is earned in sweat and shared burdens. A newcomer who pulls their weight becomes kin. One who does not, well, there are few second chances when the snow is this deep. At night, after meals, a quiet hush often falls. That's when the old songs begin. A woman hums a tune low and soft, her voice vibrating against the walls. Others join, humming first, then singing. The lyrics are old, older than memory, older than written words. You don't understand them, but you don't need to. The song is a blanket. It drapes across the longhouse, soothing, binding, weaving every voice into a single thread. The dog lifts its head, ears twitching, then settles again. The goats shift, bleating softly. Even the fire seems to listen, its crackles keeping time with the rhythm. There's something primal about this moment, something that touches a nerve deep in your own body, reminding you that humans have always survived the dark together, by sharing warmth, by sharing voice, by sharing silence. The children fall asleep to the songs. Their heads nestle into hides, their breaths even and slow. Adults stay awake longer, sipping from horns, speaking in low tones about weather, trade, hunting. Plans are made, quietly, cautiously. Who will travel to the coast when the snow thaws? Who will repair the fishing nets? Which animals are weak and may not see spring? It strikes you that survival here isn't just about enduring the present. It's about preparing for the future, and that preparation is collective. The longhouse is a council chamber as much as a shelter. Every voice has weight, even if some weigh heavier than others. You find yourself wondering what happens to those who can't keep up. The frail, the sick, the unlucky. The answer comes in gestures more than words. A bowl pressed into shaky hands. A blanket spread across narrow shoulders. A child lifted and rocked when he cries. Mercy exists here, but it is practical mercy. Not grand gestures, but small, sustaining acts. Enough to keep the group whole. As you lie down again in the thick dark, pressed between strangers who no longer feel strange, you realize something. Warmth is not the fire. Warmth is the people. The fire is only the center. It is the bodies, the voices, the shared breath that turn this longhouse from wood and turf into survival. The storm outside howls. The snow piles higher against the walls. Alone, it would be unbearable. Together, it is simply winter. You've grown accustomed to the rhythm of life inside the longhouse, the smoke, the murmurs, the steady work. But to understand how the Vikings endured, you need to step outside into the frozen world itself. So you duck through the low doorway, pull your fur tight around you, and are hit by a silence so vast it feels almost alive. The snow stretches in every direction, soft and pale, covering the earth like a heavy wool blanket. Hills roll away in white curves. The horizon is a gray blur, blending land and sky until they seem indistinguishable. The air stings your lungs as you breathe. It is sharp, metallic, and so cold it makes your teeth ache. Your boots crunch down into knee-deep snow. Every step is labor. Every exhale blooms into steam that instantly freezes into tiny crystals in your beard or hair. The longhouse behind you looks smaller out here, its turf roof half buried, smoke leaking lazily from the vent. Against the enormity of winter, even that sturdy structure looks fragile. But the Vikings do not see fragility. They see opportunity. This land, though hostile, provides. You watch as hunters prepare for a trek. They move with deliberate efficiency, layering wool under fur, strapping on skis made of polished wood, their tips curled upward like the prow of a ship. These skis aren't toys, they are lifelines. Without them, a man could vanish into the drifts before the forest is even reached. The hunters sling boughs across their backs, quivers heavy with arrows. Knives hang from their belts. One carries a spear, its iron head gleaming faintly in the dim light. They are not reckless. They are cautious, even reverent. To hunt in winter is to gamble with death, but it must be done. Meat and hides are needed, and not just for today. You follow at a distance, trudging after them into the trees. The forest is silent, muffled under snow. Branches sag heavy, brittle with frost. The world feels emptied of sound, except for the faint hiss of skis and the occasional crack of ice shifting. Even birds seem scarce, their calls swallowed by the stillness. The hunters stop suddenly, crouching low. Ahead, through a stand of birch, movement flickers a reindeer, its antlers crusted with snow. It digs at the frozen ground with its hooves, searching for moss beneath. The hunters exchange glances. Slowly, one knocks an arrow. His breath fogs around his face. The bow creaks as he pulls. The shot is clean, swift, merciful. The reindeer stumbles, collapses into the snow. The others rush forward, knives flashing, murmuring words of thanks as the animal's life fades. There is no triumph here, no boasting. Only necessity carried out with respect. Every part of this animal will be used. The meat, the hide, the sinew, even the antlers. Waste is unthinkable. As they work quickly, you notice another set of tracks near the kill. Large, wide, padded. Wolves, not fresh, but not old either. The hunters notice too. Their heads lift, eyes scanning the tree line. The forest, suddenly, feels less empty. The quiet is no longer peaceful, but tense, waiting. One man mutters something about Odin's wolves, Jerry and Freki. The others nod grimly. Predators are part of this world. Wolves, yes, but also bears, though most sleep through the deepest winter. Yet it is not the animals themselves that pose the greatest danger. It is the hunger. Wolves starving in the cold are desperate, reckless, willing to shadow hunters for days. The Vikings respect them, fear them, and in some ways admire them. Survival recognizes survival. The hunters finish quickly, hauling the reindeer carcass onto a sled. They lash it tight, then begin the slow journey back. Their skis glide smoothly over the snow, but the burden is heavy. You follow, glancing often at the tree line, half expecting yellow eyes to flash between the branches. None appear, but the tension never fades until the longhouse smoke is visible again. Back near the settlement, the frozen sea waits. The coastline is a jagged edge of ice, where waves freeze mid-crash into ridges of white and blue. Some men walk cautiously across the frozen shallows, testing each step with poles. They carry nets, not spears. Winter fishing is dangerous, but fish remain one of the few reliable sources of food when hunting fails. Holes are cut in the ice with axes, nets lowered, and the men crouch patiently, their breath forming halos in the air. Hours can pass before a catch, but patience here is survival too. Sometimes the sea offers more than fish. A dead whale washed ashore becomes a feast beyond imagining. Its meat can feed the community for weeks. Its blubber becomes fuel for lamps, a substitute for scarce firewood. Such windfalls are rare, but they are remembered in story for generations. As you walk back inland, the landscape reveals smaller, subtler dangers. Crusted snow hides streams, waiting to collapse under a careless step. Ice forms treacherous ridges along paths, capable of snapping ankles. Even the wind itself can be weapon so fierce it strips exposed skin raw in minutes. And yet, amid this cruelty, beauty blooms. A sunrise not bright, but a smear of pale gold against endless gray casts light across the snow, making it glitter like a field of diamonds. Frost coats the trees, turning every branch into sculpture. At night, the aurora unfurls overhead, ribbons of green and purple rippling like banners in a silent sky. The children tumble outside to point, their laughter cutting through the cold, and for a moment, you forget the hunger, the wolves, the endless dark. You only see wonder. The Vikings see more than beauty in these lights. They see omens. The aurora, some say, are the reflections of Valkyrie's armor as they ride across the heavens, gathering souls of the fallen. Others believe they are fires lit by ancestors, guiding the living through the night. To stand under them is to feel the world expand, to feel both tiny and eternal at once. You return to the longhouse with frozen fingers, your fur stiff with frost. The smoke inside stings your eyes again, but you welcome it now. It smells like survival. Outside is magnificent, yes, but merciless. Inside, cramped and smoky though it may be, is life. And so the rhythm continues. Out there, the frozen world tests you with danger and wonder. In here, the longhouse shields you, hums with voices, glows with firelight. Survival lies not in choosing one or the other, but in moving between them, learning to endure both. The storm outside has returned. Snow hammers the roof, and the wind shrieks like a living creature, clawing at the walls of the longhouse. Yet inside, life continues in rhythms older than memory. The smoke still curls, the fire still burns, and the people huddled together in the dim glow create their own small universe of warmth and continuity. Here, inside this turf and timber world, the true strength of the Viking community is revealed, not in the swing of swords or the clash of shields, but in the daily, deliberate labor of survival, shared equally across generations. In the longhouse, women hold quiet authority. While men may hunt, trade, or raid in warmer months, it is women who manage the household, especially in winter. The word husfreyja, meaning lady of the house, carries weight. She holds the keys to the family's wealth literally. Bronze keys, worn on a ring at her belt, unlock the chests where food, valuables, and cloth are stored. In a season where scarcity presses hard, her stewardship can mean the difference between hunger and survival. You watch as one husfreyja moves deliberately between tasks. She checks the smoked fish hanging from the rafters, testing their firmness. She kneads barley dough beside the fire, her hands moving in slow, practiced circles. She measures out grain, never carelessly, always with an eye to how many weeks remain until spring thaw. Around her, younger women and girls spin wool, their distaffs held upright as their fingers draw thread with patient precision. The thread winds into spindles, later to become cloth on looms that creak faintly in the shadows of the hall. These tasks may appear small, almost invisible beside the roar of a winter storm, but they are the skeleton of survival. Clothes, sails, bedding, all emerge from this endless turning of wool into thread. Children, too, have their roles, though softened by their youth. They fetch water from melted snow, carry armfuls of wood to the fire, and tend the goats kept in the far end of the longhouse. Their laughter lightens the air, but even their games echo the duties of adulthood. A boy drags a wooden sword across the floor, sparring with a cousin in a mock battle. A girl pretends to stir a pot with a stick, copying her mother's motions. Through play, they rehearse the life awaiting them. But winter is not easy on children. Illness is common in the close air, and fevers can spread quickly. When a child coughs through the night, the entire hall stirs with unease. Mothers murmur prayers. Fathers sit silently by the hearth, watching the flames dance as if answers might flicker there. In this world, the survival of each child feels fragile, yet every effort is made to keep them safe. They are the future, a promise that the long night will end. Kinship runs deeper than mere family ties. A longhouse is rarely occupied by a single household alone. Cousins, in-laws, foster children, and even servants live beneath the same roof. Bonds of blood and bonds of oath weave together, forming a net strong enough to hold through winter's strain. Meals are shared communally, voices blending in the half-light. When bread is passed, it is torn carefully, distributed evenly, as though to break the rhythm of fairness would be to invite misfortune. Old stories are retold of ancestors who crossed seas, of kin who held their land through famine. Each retelling strengthens identity, binding individuals into something larger. A clan, a lineage, a people. The elderly, though frail, are valued repositories of memory. An old man sits by the fire, his beard white, his voice gravelly but steady as he speaks of winters past. The children gather near, eyes wide, absorbing lessons hidden in story. How to judge the weather by the color of the sky, how to track deer by the lay of snow, how to recognize the signs of illness in animals. In him, centuries of knowledge live on. Yet not all within the longhouse share equal standing. Some are thrall slaves, taken in raids or born into bondage. Their lives are harsh, their work endless. They tend animals, haul wood, clean refuse, always under the watchful eye of the Husfreya. Their beds are in the coldest corners, their food less plentiful. But even they are part of the household's rhythm, essential gears in its machinery of survival. And over generations, some thralls are freed, becoming lesingi, freedmen, able to carve their own place in society. Winter levels everyone, in a way when hunger gnaws and cold creeps. The distinction between free and unfree blurs in the struggle for warmth. Despite hardship, tenderness exists here too. You notice it in small gestures. A father braiding his daughter's hair by firelight, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. A mother placing her own cloak over a sleeping child. A pair of young lovers exchanging glances across the hall, their smiles fleeting but bright in the smoky gloom. Love in this world is practical, often arranged by families for alliances or land. Yet human hearts do not always follow rules. Winter, with its closeness and quiet, sometimes becomes a season of new bonds. Couples whisper by the fire, promises exchanged in the shadows while the storm rages outside. From such moments, futures unfold new lives born in the spring thaw, children conceived in the long dark months. Through it all, faith weaves silently. Women offer small tokens at household shrines, carved wooden figures of Freya or Frigg tucked into corners near the hearth. A few sprigs of evergreen, gathered before snow buried the forests, are placed nearby as symbols of life enduring through winter. Oaths spoken during winter are considered especially binding, for words carry heavier weight when uttered in the shadow of hardship. A promise to protect kin, to share food, to honor ancestors. These are more than customs. They are the threads holding society together when the world outside threatens to unravel. As days blend into weeks, you see the longhouse not as a single space, but as a living web of relationships. Women guiding the rhythm of food and fabric. Children learning through laughter and imitation. Elders shaping memory into lessons. Men preparing for hunts or planning journeys when the ice thaws. Thralls working tirelessly, their labor unacknowledged but vital. Each life here is a strand, and together They weave something stronger than the sum of its parts. Alone, survival might be impossible. Together, it becomes a steady, enduring march through the long night. The storm howls again, rattling the walls, but the hall does not break. Inside, people murmur, laugh, pray, quarrel, sing. Life persists. In the heart of winter, amid smoke and firelight, the bonds of family and kinship shine brightest. The storm has calmed outside, but the night within the longhouse lingers heavy. Smoke curls upward, blurring the roof beams, and every flicker of firelight paints shadows that seem to move with minds of their own. In the long dark of a Viking winter, the line between daily survival and the unseen world grows thin. This is not just a time of hunger and cold. It is also a season of stories, rituals, and the quiet conviction that gods, spirits, and ancestors are listening. You've already noticed that the fire pit is no fireplace. It's a shallow, smoky hearth, more salt than blaze. Yet for the Vikings, this hearth was more than just a tool. It was sacred. The fire was life. The fire was home. The fire was a spirit all its own. Offerings of fat or scraps of food are sometimes tossed onto the embers. Not waste, but gifts. The crackle and hiss of burning fat is understood as the fire's voice, an acknowledgement of the offering. People whisper small prayers into the smoke, hoping it carries their words upward, out through the vent hole and into the waiting dark sky. The hearth goddess, often identified with Frigg or with unnamed local spirits, was thought to dwell here. To let the fire die completely was unthinkable. It was like letting life itself slip away. So through the night, someone always watches the embers, feeding them moss or peat, ensuring the glow never truly fades. As the storm presses down on the hall, voices rise in storytelling. It isn't entertainment in the modern sense. It's ritual, memory, and instruction all at once. An elder clears his throat, and silence falls across the benches. His voice begins low, weaving a tale of Odin wandering the world in disguise, trading an eye for wisdom. Children lean in close, listening wide-eyed. Adults nod along, filling in gaps they've heard 100 times. These stories are more than diversion. They are maps for the mind, guides for how to face hardship, how to honor loyalty, how to accept fate when it can't be changed. The sagas are survival manuals in disguise. Some stories are cosmic in scope. The creation of the world from the body of the giant Ymir, the great ash tree Yggdrasil, its roots drinking from wells of wisdom and death. Ragnarok, the final battle when gods and giants clash and fire consumes the world. Others are closer, local. Ghost stories of drowned sailors who knock at doors during snowstorms. Tales of trolls lurking at the edge of forests, their eyes glowing in moonlight. Warnings woven into narrative, teaching children not to wander too far, not to trust every voice in the dark. Every story has weight. Every word shared in the smoky gloom becomes part of the unseen shield that protects the community. Beyond story, ritual binds the longhouse to the world beyond its turf walls. Sometimes it's simple. A carved wooden figure of Thor, smeared with animal fat, set near the door to guard against storm and spirit. A bundle of herbs hung from the rafters to keep away sickness. A bowl of milk poured outside for the land spirits, the landvidder, who are thought to dwell in rocks, rivers, and fields. Other times, rituals are more solemn. The blot, a sacrifice. Though in winter, it might be modest, a goat, a sheep, or even a carved offering of bread or ale if animals are too precious to lose. The blood of sacrifice, when available, is smeared on the walls and the figures of gods, strengthening the bond between human and divine. Not every household can afford large rituals, but every household participates in the rhythm of devotion offerings to ancestors, oaths sworn over horns of ale, prayers whispered into the long night. For Vikings, ancestors are never gone. They linger, woven into the fabric of the present. Burial mounds rise on hills, visible even under snow. Families sometimes walk to them in the quiet of winter, leaving offerings of food, ale, or even small trinkets. Inside the hall, too, ancestors are present. Names are repeated in stories, spoken as if the dead still listen. Children are named after grandparents, and in that naming, the past continues. To forget an ancestor is to let them die twice. To remember is to keep them active in the circle of kin. There's also a sense that the dead can intervene. A cough that won't ease, a hunt that fails, a snowstorm that strikes too soon. These might be signs that ancestors are displeased. A quick offering of bread, a whispered apology, might set things right again. At night, when the smoke curls upward and shadows move strangely on the rafters, people glance into the dim corners and wonder if ancestors are sitting silently among them, unseen but close. Winter nights are long, and dreams feel longer still. Sleep is heavy, interrupted by coughs and the crack of frost splitting wood outside. But within those dreams, messages are sought. Dreams of animals carry meaning. A bear in a dream may mean strength coming. A wolf may mean danger or betrayal. A raven circling above? Odin's eye, watching. People share their dreams by firelight, and others interpret. A woman might dream of a field in bloom, and the Husfreyja nods knowingly. A good harvest is foretold. A man might dream of a ship breaking apart, and elders frown. A warning not to travel when ice still grips the seas. Even daily omens are read with care. The flight of birds over the longhouse, the way smoke drifts through the rafters, the sudden stillness of animals. Every sign is a whisper from the unseen world, and only fools ignore them. In the heart of winter comes Yule, a festival both solemn and joyful. Today many imagine Yule as feasts and merriment. And yes, those existed, but its deeper roots are about survival, faith, and renewal. Families save precious food for this time. Ale is brewed months ahead, stored in barrels now tapped for celebration. Animals, usually a pig or goat, are slaughtered, their meat smoked, roasted, shared. Bones are cracked for marrow, every scrap consumed. It is both a feast and an offering, a recognition that survival is not just physical but spiritual. Fires are lit higher, candles set in rows, defying the crushing dark. People gather to sing songs, beat drums, dance in circles. The air fills with smoke, laughter, chanting, a brief moment when life feels bigger than hardship. There is also the Yule log, a massive piece of wood set on the fire to burn through the night. Its sparks are omens, its steady burning a promise of continuity. Ashes from the log are sometimes kept and scattered in fields come spring, blessing the soil with the endurance of fire. Children are told stories of the Julenis, spirits who wander at Yule, some mischievous, others protective. They are given offerings of porridge or milk, lest they turn sour and play tricks. In Yule, the Vikings marked not just the passage of time, but the victory of endurance. The darkest night passed, the days soon to lengthen again. For all the rituals and festivals, there is also fear. Winter is when the Draugr, the restless dead, are most feared to walk. Tailies tell of them rising from mounds, pale and swollen, their breath freezing in the air. They come not always to harm, but often to demand remembrance, to remind the living of debts unpaid. The wild hunt is another terror whispered in smoky corners. A ghostly procession led by Odin himself, riding across the sky in storm and gale. To hear it was to know someone would die. Doors are barred, fires banked, prayers muttered quickly when the wind howls too loud. Fear, though, is not despair. It is vigilance. Every tale, every warning is a reminder. The world is full of more than what eyes can see, and survival means respecting that unseen world. As the days creep slowly toward spring, you begin to understand. Winter is not only a season of hunger, smoke, and survival, it is also sacred time. A season where the veil between worlds feels thin, where ancestors, gods, and spirits lean close. Rituals, stories, and omens are not extras. They are the framework of endurance. Without them, people might collapse into despair. With them, every cough, every gust of wind, every shadow becomes part of a pattern, woven into the great tapestry of existence. In the glow of firelight, as the longhouse hums with story and song, you realize survival here is not just physical. It is spiritual, emotional, communal. The myths, rituals, and spirits in the smoke are not distractions from hardship. They are what make hardship bearable. The storm outside can rage as it pleases. Inside, the people of the longhouse are anchored to something greater than cold and hunger. Anchored to gods, to ancestors, to each other. And that is why, year after year, through storm after storm, they endure. The storm has blown itself out. Outside the longhouse, the snow lies heavy and unbroken, a white silence stretching to the horizon. The air is sharper now, clearer, and though the cold cuts deep, it carries with it a stillness that almost feels clean. Winter has locked the land in place, but the Vikings were never a people who stood still for long. Even in the depth of the dark months, the thought of trade, travel, and distant horizons never fully disappears. Survival is the immediate task. Yes, but beyond it lies ambition. To reach other lands, to bring back goods, stories, and wealth. The Viking world, for all its snowdrifts and frozen rivers, is not a closed one. It stretches outward, across seas and rivers, across Europe and beyond. For much of the winter, the sea is too treacherous for travel. Fjords freeze at their edges, ice sheets drift like jagged blades, and storms can rise without warning. Ships are drawn up on shore, their hulls resting on timbers, their sails rolled tight and stored against damp. Tar is smeared on planks to protect them through the months of inactivity. Yet sailors never stop thinking of the sea. Inside longhouses, knots are tied and retied in idle hands. Ropes are checked, sails mended by the dim light. Children play at rowing on the packed earth floor, chanting rhythms they've heard their fathers sing. The sea waits, and the Vikings wait with it. Some fjords, warmed by currents, stay partially open even in the coldest months. Here, small boats still move, ferrying goods between farms or neighboring settlements. Fish are pulled from the dark waters, nets hauled in with stiff fingers. Winter dulls, but does not kill the sea's gift. Where the sea is blocked, overland routes take on greater importance. Snow that hinders crops can sometimes ease travel sleds glide across it, pulled by horses or oxen, even by dogs. Skis, too, find their place. Simple, narrow boards strapped to feet, used by hunters and messengers alike. Paths between settlements are beaten into the snow, and traders move slowly along them, cloaks pulled tight, packs heavy with dried fish, wool, carved goods, or antler. These goods find their way not just between villages, but farther, across mountains, down frozen rivers, to distant markets, where Norse and Sami people trade reindeer hides, furs, and ivory from walrus tusks. At certain points in the year, even deep winter, gatherings are held where people exchange goods and news. These markets are less bustling than the great summer fairs, but no less vital. You can imagine trudging through snow toward one such gathering, torches burning in the dim light, stalls set up beneath canvas weighed down by frost. Traders display knives, beads of amber, carved bone combs, bundles of wool. Sami traders arrive with reindeer hides, soft and insulating, prized for winter clothing. Others bring dried fish, barrels of butter, or carved drinking horns. And always, alongside goods, comes news. Who raided last summer? Who plans to sail come spring? Which families lost kin to sickness? Which gained new children? Trade is not only economic, it is connective tissue, binding scattered settlements into a larger, living network. Even as winter holds the land, thoughts turn outward. Men and women alike speak of voyages past and voyages to come. The longhouse air is thick with tales of far lands, the markets of Hidibi and Merca, where silver coins clink and foreign cloth dazzles the eye. The rivers of the east, where traders follow winding paths deep into Slavic lands, even reaching Constantinople, where golden domes rise above crowded streets. The green shores of Iceland, the icy edges of Greenland, the whispered rumors of a land even farther west. Each tale is embroidered by memory, pride, or longing, but each also keeps alive the restless energy that defines Viking life. Winter is endurance, yes, but also waiting. Waiting for ice to break, for rivers to thaw, for sails to rise against spring winds. In the smoky light of the longhouse, someone pours out a handful of silver coins. They gleam faintly, even beneath soot and haze. These are not minted here. They come from far places. Arab dirhams, Saxon pennies, Frankish dinars. Each coin carries with it not just value but story. Of journeys taken, raids endured, trades made. Silver is the currency that flows through Viking hands. Weighed on balances, hacked into pieces, it circulates like lifeblood across the north. A scrap of silver can buy a goat. A pouch of it can seal a marriage. A chest of it can fund a raid. Even in the heart of winter, when no ships move, silver is counted, weighed, sometimes buried for safekeeping. Families speak of debts owed and promises kept, their voices low but firm. For in the Viking world, honor and silver often march side by side. Trade isn't only about goods, it's about relationships. In a world where survival can hinge on the goodwill of neighbors, hospitality is a form of wealth. Travelers who arrive at the longhouse door in the dead of winter are not turned away, at least not without grave reason. To offer a bed of straw, a share of stew, a seat by the fire, that is to build bonds that may one day save your own life. Guest friendship, or gestur vinata, is remembered across years, even generations. A man whose grandfather was once fed and sheltered in a snowstorm may offer aid in return when famine strikes. These invisible networks of obligation stretch as far as the Viking world itself, from Norway to Ireland, from Greenland to the Black Sea. Though travel is limited, winter is the season of preparation. for voyages yet to come. Ships are inspected, their planks tightened, their sails patched. Ropes are coiled and tarred, shields repainted, weapons sharpened. Inside the longhouse, women weave sailcloth broad, heavy bolts of wool, thick enough to catch the wind of the open sea. Each thread twisted between fingers, each loom beat echoing softly in the smoky air, is a step toward journeys that will stretch beyond the horizon. Children watch, learning without knowing, absorbing skills that will one day fall to them. They see that survival is not just about enduring the winter in place. It is about always looking forward, always preparing for the moment when movement is possible again. Even without travel, news flows. A trader arrives from the south, his beard stiff with frost, bringing stories of kings at war, of monasteries raided, of markets swelling with goods. His words ripple through the hall, filling imaginations with images of distant wealth and danger. News is as precious as silver. It shapes decisions, where to raid, where to settle, where to trade. In the silence of winter, words carry weight. A single rumor can alter plans for an entire summer fleet. Through all of this, you sense something profound. The Vikings are not a people trapped by winter. They are paused by it. The long night is endured, yes, but always with eyes cast forward, to the sea, to the thaw, to the next horizon. Their world is wide, wider than the snowbound fields, wider than the frozen fjord, wider even than the sea they love so much. From Baghdad to Newfoundland, from Greenland's ice to Constantinople's gold, their reach is astonishing. And even here, in the deepest cold, in the stillness of the longhouse, that reach is alive. Every coin, every story, every plan whispered by firelight is a thread that ties this smoky hall to the vast world beyond. Winter does not stop the Vikings. It only teaches them patience. The nights have been long. For what feels like an age, the world has been made of snow and silence, broken only by the sound of axe on wood, the crackle of fire, the murmur of voices within the hall. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, change begins to arrive. You notice it in the morning, how the dark does not linger quite so long. A faint ribbon of pale gold spreads earlier across the horizon, turning the ice a gentle pink. The days, though still short, begin to lengthen. Not by much, only a matter of minutes at first, but enough to notice. Enough to lift the spirit. Birds begin to stir. A raven's call carries through the trees with greater insistence. The air, though sharp with cold, has lost some of its bite. Snow melts and refreezes, leaving patches of dark earth revealed beneath the drifts. The cycle is shifting. The sun is on its way back. For the Vikings, this moment was never just a curiosity of the sky. It was a signal. The turning of the year meant life could soon move outward again. Animals that had been slaughtered in autumn gave way to the slow return of grazing. Trapped rivers would soon run, bringing fresh fish. Most of all, the shifting sun was a reminder that patience would be rewarded. The world was not static, however endless winter might have seemed. Every hardship had an ending. The cosmos, to the Norse mind, was built on cycles. Death and rebirth, night and day, winter and summer. Each harsh season was part of a larger rhythm. The long months indoors left their mark. Families had grown closer, or in some cases, endured tension smoothed over by necessity. Disputes that might have flared into violence in summer had been contained by the simple truth that no one could risk division when survival depended on unity. Children had grown. Their faces, sharper now, carried the imprint of stories told and chores learned. Skills passed from hand to hand, spinning, carving, hunting, cooking would not be forgotten. Guests, too, had left their impression. A traveler who had come to the door in snow, eerie and near frozen, was now a friend. Bonds of hospitality forged in winter firelight would ripple outward into future years. Yet not all tensions could be held back. When spring came and the people gathered at the open-air assembly where disputes were heard, the cases of winter would rise like embers stirred back into flame. Who had borrowed food but failed to repay it? Who had let an insult slip in the tight space of the hall? Who owed silver? Who promised labor? Who demanded justice? The longhouse was both shield and crucible. Winter survival made cooperation necessary, but memory made accountability inevitable. The thing was where balance returned, where the community took stock, not only of supplies, but of the honor and obligations that bound them together. Then, at last, it happens. Ice cracks and runs like glass breaking. Water gurgles where for months there was only silence. Snow withdraws from fields, revealing black soil eager for the plow. The first green shoots pierce the ground, delicate yet unyielding. The longhouse doors open wide. The smoke that once clung to beams now disperses into open air. Work surges outward, fields to till, boats to mend, animals to tend. The world that seemed small and enclosed expands again. You can imagine the feeling. To stand outside after months of confinement, sun on the face, breath misting in the still cold air, and know that the worst is past. It is here, in this moment of release, that the deeper truth of Viking winter reveals itself. The long night was never only about endurance. It was about remembering one's place within the cycles of the world. Darkness teaches the value of light. Hunger sharpens the taste of plenty. Stillness prepares the way for movement. Waiting deepens the joy of action. Each season was understood as part of a balance, each necessary in its own way. Winter humbled, yes, but it also clarified. It bound families together, reminded them of their dependence on God's neighbors and kin, and kept alive the dream of what lay beyond the horizon. Even in summer, when ships cut across bright seas and fields glowed gold with grain, the memory of winter never vanished. It lingered in the mind, shaping choices. It reminded people to store away food against lean times, to treat neighbors with caution and respect, for they might one day share a roof when storms made the world small, to honor gods who gave light and warmth, and to remember ancestors who had endured harsher nights still. Winter was not just a season. It was a teacher, a test, and in some ways, a mirror. It revealed who could endure, who could adapt, and who could hold fast when everything else fell silent. And so, as the sun climbs higher and the days stretch long again, the cycle continues. Another summer will come, another autumn, and beyond them, another winter. Each long night will bring its own hardships, but also its own lessons. The Vikings, like us, lived not in a world of constant abundance, but in a rhythm of scarcity and plenty, light and dark. Their strength lay in accepting that rhythm, preparing for it, and even finding meaning within it. When we look back on their winter's smoky halls, glowing against the snow, we glimpse not just survival, but a way of seeing that endurance itself is a kind of triumph, and that no night, however long, is truly endless. And so we leave the hall, step outside once more. The snow is melting, the air is softening, and the world is waking. The Viking winter has passed, but its memory remains, carried forward in story, in tradition, and in the quiet resilience of those who lived it. The long night is over. The sun has returned. And that's where we'll leave our journey for tonight. The snow has melted, the rivers are flowing again, and the long Viking winter has given way to spring. What we've walked through together wasn't just a season of cold, but a lesson in patience, endurance, and finding warmth in the company of others. If you've stayed with me all the way until now, thank you. I hope this story gave you a little space to breathe, to imagine, and maybe to drift off for some rest of your own. If you'd like to hear more journeys like this, feel free to subscribe and join me again. And if you're already part of this little community, know that I'm grateful for every single one of you. Until next time, may your nights be warm, your dreams peaceful, and may you always find light waiting at the end of the long dark good night.